The distress signal, the crimson nebula stretched across the viewport like a bleeding wound in the fabric of space. Captain Thyra of the Kirathi science vessel, Luminous Dream, watched the swirling clouds of ionized gas with growing desperation. 3 weeks had passed since their primary drive core suffered a catastrophic failure, leaving them stranded in one of the most isolated regions of known space. The Kirathi were an ancient species, their civilization spanning 12,000 years of recorded history. They had mastered interstellar travel when most species were still discovering fire. Their ships were works of art, crystalline structures that sang with harmonic frequencies as they slipped through the quantum foam between stars. But all that advancement meant nothing now. The Luminous Dream drifted helplessly through the nebula, its elegant form darkened by power failures and system malfunctions. Thyra's 4 arms moved gracefully across the command interface, her iridescent skin shifting from deep purple to pale violet as stress hormones flooded her system. The Kirathi communicated as much through color changes as they did through their melodic language. Right now, every member of her 30-person crew displayed the same anxious hues. Science Officer Zelith approached the command platform, his tall, willowy frame moving with the fluid grace that characterized their species. His primary eyes, large and multifaceted like polished gems, reflected the emergency lighting that bathed the bridge in amber tones. His secondary eyes, smaller and positioned at his temples, remained focused on the datapad in his upper hands. The situation had deteriorated beyond their worst calculations. The quantum drive failure had triggered a cascade of system failures throughout the ship. Their food synthesizers operated at 30% capacity. Water recycling systems struggled to maintain minimum standards. Most critically, their life support systems showed signs of imminent failure. They had perhaps 15 days before the air became unbreathable. The nearest Kirathi outpost lay 47 light-years away. Even if they could send a message, which the nebula's interference made impossible, no rescue vessel could reach them in time. They had exhausted every option in their extensive database of emergency procedures. The Kirathi, for all their technological sophistication, had no solution for their current predicament. Thyra made a decision that went against every protocol in their civilization's long history. The Kirathi had always been cautious about contact with younger species. They observed from afar, occasionally sharing knowledge with civilizations that showed promise, but never placing themselves in positions of vulnerability. But desperate times called for desperate measures. She activated the Universal Distress Beacon, a piece of technology that the Kirathi had developed centuries ago but never used. The beacon would broadcast their location and situation on every known frequency, in every mathematical language that might be understood by spacefaring species. It was an invitation to anyone who might hear it, friend or foe, advanced or primitive. The SAW crew watched in silence as the beacon activated, sending its desperate plea into the void. Some displayed colors of shame at their reduced circumstances. Others showed the deep indigo of fear, wondering what manner of species might answer their call. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. Pirates, slavers, and hostile civilizations all posed threats to a defenseless vessel. 4 days passed with agonizing slowness. The crew rationed their remaining supplies, shut down non-essential systems, and waited. Some began preparing farewell messages for their families, recording them in the ship's emergency beacon in case their bodies were ever found. Others meditated in the traditional Kirathi way, seeking peace in the face of approaching death. Then, on the 5th day, sensors detected an approaching vessel. The ship that emerged from hyperspace defied Kirathi expectations. Where Kirathi vessels were elegant and crystalline, this ship was angular and aggressive. Its hull was dark metal, scarred by countless micrometeorite impacts and bearing the marks of combat. Weapon ports lined its sides, and its engines glowed with barely contained violence. This was not a ship of exploration or science. This was a warship. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the USS Perseverance and studied the alien vessel on her main screen. The human warship had been on deep patrol when they detected the distress signal. Sarah had commanded the Perseverance for 3 years, and in that time, she had faced pirates, navigated asteroid fields, and participated in 2 minor conflicts. But this was different. This was potential first contact with an unknown species. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Around her, Lieutenant Marcus Webb at Tactical, his dark fingers dancing across his console as he analyzed the alien ship for threats. Dr. Amara Singh at the science station, her eyes bright with excitement at the prospect of meeting a new species. Chief Engineer Dmitry Volkov monitoring their systems, ready to push their engines beyond safe limits if needed. The alien vessel was beautiful in a way that human ships were not. It seemed to capture and refract light, creating rainbow patterns across its surface. But Sarah could see the damage. Hull breaches temporarily sealed with some kind of energy field. Engines dark and cold. The ship listed slightly, suggesting failed attitude control systems. Sarah made her decision quickly. Humans had only been among the stars for 200 years, barely a heartbeat in cosmic terms. But in that time, they had learned one truth that seemed to escape older civilizations. Sometimes the right thing to do was also the simplest. Someone needed help. Humans would answer. She opened a communication channel, broadcasting on the same frequencies as the distress signal. The universal translator struggled with the alien language, but mathematics bridged the gap. Soon, basic communication was established. The aliens called themselves Kirathi. They were scientists and explorers, stranded and dying. They needed immediate assistance. Some of Sarah's crew expressed concern. This could be a trap. The aliens might be hostile. Their technology appeared far more advanced than humanity's in some ways. But Sarah remembered the words of her academy instructor, Admiral James Morrison, who had said that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their willingness to extend a hand to those in need. The Perseverance moved closer to the luminous dream, sensors active and weapons powered but not targeted. Sarah could see her crew's tension but also their excitement. This was what they had trained for, what they had hoped for when they joined the space service. Not war, but the chance to make a difference in the vast cosmos. As the 2 ships drew closer, Sarah stood from her command chair and straightened her uniform. First contact protocols were clear, but they had been written for meetings between equals, not rescue operations. She would have to improvise, to rely on human instinct and compassion rather than rigid procedure. She opened the channel again, and this time, the translator had improved its understanding. A melodic voice filled the bridge, speaking in halting, but understandable English. The voice carried exhaustion and desperation, but also a note of hope that had not been there before. Captain Thyra could not believe what she was seeing. The approaching vessel was primitive by Kirathi standards. Its technology was crude, its design inelegant. But it was coming to help. These humans, as they called themselves, had heard their distress call and chosen to respond despite the risks. In 12,000 years of Kirathi civilization, she had never heard of such a young species taking such a bold action. The human commander's face appeared on their communication screen. Thyra was surprised by how similar and yet different humans appeared. Bipedal with only 2 arms, lacking the color-changing ability of the Kirathi, but their faces showed expression through muscle movement that was remarkably easy to interpret. The human female displayed what Thyra recognized as determination, mixed with compassion. Through careful translation, Sarah explained that they would attempt to dock with the luminous dream and provide immediate assistance. They had emergency supplies, repair equipment, and medical facilities. Most importantly, they had engineers who specialized in improvisation and problem-solving. If anyone could repair an alien drive system, it would be human engineers who had learned to fix hyperdrives with little more than determination and creativity. The rescue and revelation. The docking procedure required 3 hours of careful calculation and adjustment. The Kirathi docking ports were hexagonal, designed for their crystalline technology, while human ports were circular and mechanical. But Chief Engineer Dmitry Volkov had not earned his reputation by giving up easily. Using emergency hull sealant and modified magnetic clamps, he created a temporary airlock between the two vessels. Sarah was the first human to step aboard the luminous Dream, accompanied by Dr. Singh and a security detail led by Lieutenant Webb. The Kyrathi ship's interior took their breath away. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The air had a musical quality to it, as if the ship itself was singing at a frequency just below human hearing. Despite the emergency lighting and system failures, the vessel retained an ethereal beauty. Captain Thyra met them in what she called the Harmony Chamber, a central meeting space where the ship's various systems converged. Sarah's first sight of the Kyrathi commander made her grateful for the extensive xenobiology training all human officers received. Thyra stood 7 feet tall on legs that bent in 3 places. Her 4 arms moved independently, each performing different tasks. Her skin shifted through a spectrum of colors that Sarah's translator indicated were emotional responses. But it was Thyra's eyes that captured Sarah's attention. 4 of them, the 2 primary ones large and multifaceted, showing intelligence and depth that transcended species barriers. When Thyra spoke, her voice was like a symphony, multiple tones harmonizing into words that the translator converted to English. The Kyrathi crew had gathered in the Harmony Chamber, 30 beings who had resigned themselves to death now looking at their human rescuers with expressions Sarah could not fully interpret. Their skin colors shifted in waves, creating patterns that were hauntingly beautiful. Some reached out with their lower arms in what appeared to be a greeting gesture, while their upper arms remained folded in what might have been caution or respect. Dmitri and his engineering team immediately set to work. The Kyrathi watched in amazement as the humans approached their advanced technology, not with reverence or fear, but with practical determination. Where the Kyrathi would have consulted databases and run countless simulations, the humans simply started taking things apart to see how they worked. The quantum drive core was unlike anything humans had encountered. It operated on principles that human science had only theorized about. The Kyrathi engineers explained through increasingly efficient translation that the core created micro-wormholes, allowing the ship to skip across space-time like a stone on water. The failure had occurred when a quantum resonance cascade had destabilized the containment field. Dmitri listened to the explanation, nodded, and then said something that the Kyrathi would remember for generations. He said simply that every engine, no matter how advanced, followed basic principles of physics: input, output, and conversion. If they could not repair it the Kyrathi way, they would repair it the human way. What followed was 12 hours of what the Kyrathi would later describe as controlled chaos. Humans worked alongside Kyrathi, using tools and techniques that seemed impossibly crude but somehow effective. When they could not interface with Kyrathi systems directly, they built adapters. When Kyrathi components proved incompatible with human repairs, they fabricated bridges using materials from both ships. Sarah worked to maintain communication and coordination between the 2 crews. She learned that the Kyrathi had been observing younger species for millennia, never interfering, only watching and recording. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, watched species take their first tentative steps into space, observed wars and peace alike. But they had never seen anything quite like humans. Humans, Thyra explained, were paradoxes. They were young but adaptable, violent but compassionate, primitive but innovative. Most species developed along predictable paths, their technology and society evolving in logical progressions. Humans seemed to skip steps, to leap forward in unexpected directions, to solve problems not through superior knowledge but through sheer determination and creativity. Dr. Singh worked with the Kyrathi medical officer, a being named Vilix, whose 6 eyes could see across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Together, they developed treatments for Kyrathi crew members suffering from prolonged exposure to radiation from the damaged drive core. Human medicine was primitive compared to Kyrathi. Healing songs, harmonics that could accelerate cellular regeneration, but human antibiotics and radiation treatments proved surprisingly effective when combined with Kyrathi techniques. The breakthrough came when Dmitri suggested something that no Kyrathi engineer would have considered. Instead of trying to repair the quantum resonance field, why not bypass it entirely? They could use the human hyperdrive to create a stable wormhole, then use the Kirathi navigation systems to direct it. It was crude, dangerous, and violated several laws of physics as the Kirathi understood them. But it might work. The integration required both crews to work in perfect synchronization. Humans installed hyperdrive components directly into the Kirathi engine room, creating a hybrid system that should not have functioned but somehow did. The Kirathi modified their harmonic controls to interface with human computers, creating a fusion of technologies separated by millennia of development but united by desperate innovation. When the hybrid drive powered up for the first time, both ships shook with harmonics that made everyone's teeth ache. The crystalline walls of the luminous dream resonated with the crude power of human engines, while the Perseverance's hull sang with Kirathi frequencies. For a moment, it seemed the experiment would tear both ships apart. Then the drives synchronized. The quantum field stabilized. The engines hummed with power that was neither fully human nor fully Kirathi, but something entirely new. The luminous dream's lights brightened, systems coming back online one by one. Life support returned to full function. The food synthesizers resumed operation. The ship's harmonic song, which had been a mournful dirge, became a melody of hope. Captain Thyra's skin shifted through colors that her crew had never seen her display before. The translator indicated emotions that had no human equivalent, but Sarah understood the gratitude in the alien captain's gestures. The Kirathi crew began to sing, their voices joining in harmonies that made the ship itself resonate. It was, Dr. Singh would later write, one of the most beautiful sounds ever heard by human ears. But the rescue had accomplished more than just saving lives. As the two crews worked together, barriers broke down. Lieutenant Webb shared combat stories with Kirathi security officers, finding common ground in their duty to protect others. Engineers from both species began designing improvements that neither could have imagined alone. Scientists exchanged theories that challenged assumptions on both sides. The Kirathi shared their star charts, showing humanity the location of phenomena they had only dreamed of observing. They warned of dangerous species in distant sectors of cosmic hazards that human sensors could not yet detect. In return, humans shared their music, their art, their stories of struggle and triumph that resonated with the ancient species in unexpected ways. Zealith, the Kirathi science officer, spent hours discussing philosophy with Dr. Singh. The Kirathi had long believed that younger species lacked the wisdom to understand the universe's deeper mysteries, but human philosophy, born from struggle and suffering, offered perspectives that 12,000 years of Kirathi civilization had never considered. As the time came for the ships to part ways, both crews gathered in their respective observation decks. The luminous dream would return to Kirathi space, carrying news of humanity that would reshape their entire civilization's approach to younger species. The Perseverance would return to human space with knowledge that would advance human technology by decades. Captain Thyra transmitted a final message to Commander Chen. In it, she spoke of how the Kirathi had watched the galaxy for millennia, believing themselves to be shepherds of younger civilizations. But humans had shown them something they had forgotten in their long isolation. Sometimes, the teacher must become the student. Sometimes wisdom came not from age, but from willingness to act when action was needed. Captain Thyra transmitted a final message to Commander Chen. In it, she spoke of how the Kirathi had watched the galaxy for millennia, believing themselves to be shepherds of younger civilizations. But humans had shown them something they had forgotten in their long isolation. Sometimes the teacher must become the student. Sometimes wisdom came not from age but from willingness to act when action was needed. The Kirathi High Council would debate for years about the implications of this first contact. Some argued that humanity's rapid development and aggressive nature made them dangerous. Others pointed to their compassion and innovation as signs of great potential. But all agreed on one point. Humanity had earned the respect of one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, not through power or technology, but through the simple act of answering a call for help. Sarah stood on her bridge as the luminous dream engaged its hybrid drive and disappeared into a quantum tunnel of its own making. Her crew was exhausted but exhilarated. They had made first contact, saved lives, and forged an alliance that would shape both species' futures. But more than that, they had proven something that humanity had always believed but never been able to demonstrate on a galactic scale. Humanity might be young compared to the ancient civilizations among the stars. Their technology might be crude, their methods unorthodox, but they possessed something that transcended age and advancement. They had the courage to reach out into the darkness, to answer calls for help, to stand with others against the vast indifference of space. As the Perseverance turned toward home, its crew carried with them more than just new knowledge and technology. They carried proof that humanity belonged among the stars, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals worthy of respect. The galaxy had thought Earth was just another young world struggling to find its place. But humanity had shown them something different. They had shown them that youth could mean innovation, that inexperience could mean freedom from convention, and that sometimes the newest members of the galactic community could teach the oldest members lessons they desperately needed to learn. The Void had held the Karathi prisoner, trapped by their own advanced technology's failure and their ancient protocols that prevented them from seeking help. But humanity had answered their call, not because it was logical or safe, but because it was right, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be truly advanced. The story of the Luminous Dream's rescue would spread throughout known space, carried by traders and explorers, diplomats and warriors. It would inspire other young species to reach beyond their fears. It would cause ancient civilizations to reconsider their isolation. And it would establish humanity, not as subjects to be protected or threats to be contained, but as partners in the great endeavor of exploring and understanding the cosmos. In the years that followed, human and Karathi ships would often be seen together, their contrasting designs a symbol of unity and diversity. The hybrid drive technology would revolutionize space travel. The philosophical exchanges would enrich both cultures. But most importantly, the rescue of the Luminous Dream would stand as proof that in the vast darkness between stars, compassion and courage could bridge any gap, overcome any difference, and light the way to a better future for all species willing to extend a hand in friendship. The Void had held them prisoner. But humanity had answered with more than just a warship. They had answered with the one thing that no amount of technology could replace, the willingness to risk everything to save strangers who had called out in the darkness. And that, more than any weapon or discovery, would be humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy.